See what I can do with it.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to the UK BIM Alliance Forum. This is our Q2 forum, so second of the year. I'm your event host today. My name's Andy Booth, and I co-lead engagement with Pam Bhandal, who's standing over there. So this is an engagement activity. Thank you for coming along, giving up your afternoon. We've got a really good agenda for you, some good speakers lined up, some good content. So hopefully it's a really useful afternoon for you. So just a very quick bit of housekeeping. Where we came in, we're the coffee area. If you head round the back of there, if you need the facilities, they're just round the back of that area where the coffees are along the side. There's no planned fire alarms or anything today, so if it does go off, it's real. There are fire exits either side again as we go out, but the kind lady out there will direct us. Other than that, we're all good to go. We're going to aim to, we've got quite a lot to fit in. I'll flick to the agenda now. And we're going to aim to finish the event for 5 at the latest, so you can get on your way. So thanks for coming along. Special thanks really for those of you in the audience. There's quite a few of you that are involved in the Alliance in some shape or form, whether it's in the engagement side, the implementation, the projects, the working groups. Massive. It makes a big difference to us, and without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So big things from myself and the exec for that. This is the agenda. So we've got a guest speaker from CDBB, Alexandra Bolton. Real pleasure to have Alexandra along. She's going to kick us off with a bit of an update on what's going on in the Centre for Digital Build Britain. Then we'll Anne, our chair of the UK BIM Alliance, to give a bit of an update and a view from the bridge. We'll then follow on to an engagement update. So Pam and myself will deliver that, and we've got some really good speakers in there to support that conversation. We'll then have a break at 3:15. Then over to implementation. So the project side of the Alliance, what's the update on the ongoing projects and what's in the pipeline and what we're delivering. I'll then ask the exec team to come out the front. So if you've got any questions, Q&A, please do ask, and we'll be as transparent as we can be. That's what we're about. And then, like I say, we'll try and close at 4:30, moving to 5. After each segment, we will have a bit of a Q&A session, so I'll get up and just see. So if you do think of quick questions along the way, please do shout out, and we'll try and answer those for you. So that's probably enough from me. Can I invite Alexandra up to give us an update from CDBB? Fantastic.
I'm just trying to put it that one. Alexandra's got her own. She wants to put it on. Or I could do it whatever way you prefer. Yeah, it'd be easier to click that one.
Oh, you're running.
Oh, there we go. We have action. Thank you very much.
Do you want a microphone? We saw you shout. We do have a
Can people hear me at the back? Am I loud enough?
Just about.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Wave if it gets quiet. Firstly, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I'm Alexandra Bolton. I'm the Executive Director of the Centre for Digital Build Britain. And I just want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in Cambridge, what we're doing as part of the wider construction innovation hub. But the first thing I want to say is thank you. I know this is a slide people normally have at the end, but actually thank you, because you in the room and loads of people outside, you've been working tirelessly for a decade or so to get information management, BIM, data, whatever you want to call it, really embedded into buildings, into infrastructure. And I wouldn't be in a job if you hadn't done such a fantastic job, and the business wouldn't be in such a good state if you haven't done such a great job. So first thing is thank you, and we really recognise that CDBB isn't something that's just come out of thin air. It's something that's building on and hopefully working with people like yourselves. So a little bit about the centre. It was set up in August 2017 as a partnership between government and the University of Cambridge and industry to support the digital transformation of the built environment. And our government department is BASE, but we work as well with FCO, with DIT and with IPA, and others like MHCLG as things come up. Our general sort of premise is we look at research, we use that research to inform policy, we use policy to support change within the industry, and then we hope that that change, that industry program is going to feed back into new research. And when I say research, I don't mean somebody sitting in a lab never talking to anybody outside. It's very much about collaborative research, it's about applied research. So far we've run a number of research projects. Some of them have been quite small, they've been working around early career researchers, some of them have been bigger. We're centred in Cambridge, but we're very much a national hub. So we've worked with about a dozen universities, but if you look at the people who've been collaborating on those projects, probably about 30 or 50, that sort of number. It's about building a multidisciplinary research community, so it's not just about the tech's really important, but it's also about behavioural change, it's about legal change, it's about regulatory change. And it's about setting out what is that long-term research agenda, what do we need to do to create a digital built Britain? And we know we need really close links with industry to make that happen. We use the research we do to inform policy. We try and bring together people to look at the research outputs, to look at industry outputs and create evidence-based policy. We've created a Home Nations group, which hopefully is going to align or is working to align the way the 4 Home Nations look at information management. We've just set up a public sector ISO transition working group because with the move from the PAS to the ISO, the public sector needs a little bit of support to make sure they're asking the right questions, that they're following the right set of regulations. I'll talk a little bit more about the Digital Framework Task Group, but that's been set up, and its outputs to date are the Gemini principles and the roadmap. So I'll talk more about that later. And we also have an international and prosperity programs which work together to expand the market for the UK to export its information management expertise internationally. For me, the most important thing is about supporting change. We could do all the research we want, have all the policy we want. If it doesn't work in practice in industry, it's useless. So we need to think about what the coordinated vision is towards a digital built Britain. How do we grow and open this global digital construction market? We need to make sure that we've got good, strong industry engagement across the supply chain. We in Cambridge are looking to highlight where's good practice, who's doing stuff really well, and how can we use what they're doing by creating use studies, value cases, how can we use that to help others move along that journey? I've been talking a bit about a digital built Britain, but what do I mean by that? It's about data and it's about information. When you're going to build a thing, and that could be a building, it could be a rail network, it could be a hospital, it could be a whole region. You need to think right at the very start, before you even pick up your mouse, before you pick up your pencil, what are my information requirements? What information do I need and at what point? And that data, that information right at the start is critical. We need to make sure that it's secure by default, and we need to make sure that we can deploy all the digital techniques that we can use to create that data and to manage that data. We need them embedded in right at the start of the design. Once you've got your design, you need to build your thing, your asset, your building. We're really keen that we look at new and emerging technologies, but we also don't throw away the technologies that we've got that work really well at the moment. How do we use those together to make sure that we've got manufacturing and digital to allow us to create a better thing, quicker, safer, faster? We need to make sure that we've got secure information sharing enabled so that clients, designers, contractors, they can work together with a single point of truth. We need to make sure that we use that data to improve safety on site, to improve the quality of what we're building, and to improve the productivity of that construction process. Once you've got your asset, and this is the bit where historically we've fallen down, we usually have some great models and some great data, but it can seem like people hand that over with the keys and walk away. How do we make sure we still use that data while we're operating the asset? How do we make sure that we use that data and add it to the data that the asset's creating as it's being operated? How do we make sure that we're using smart asset management techniques to predict when we need to do maintenance, to predict when there might be a possible disruption of services? And we mustn't forget, we've got a whole heap of existing assets. How do we digitise those? I think the statistics are that 99.5% of the assets that we'll have this time next year we currently have. So if we're only looking at new build, it's just not good enough. We need to look across the whole spectrum. And we also need to look about how do we integrate our portfolio of information across whether it's a building, a suite of buildings, a city, a region, or a nation. How do we integrate that? How do we understand how the data we're creating can help make us create better spaces, better services for citizens, for people? It's about making sure that people have a much better quality of life because of the data that we're collecting and the information that we're using. And we then need to think all the way along that, from the design, the build, the operate, integrate, how do we start feeding back things we've learned? So the next time we're building one of these things, the next time we're even thinking about building one of these things, we do it better. We know what questions we should be asking, just that little bit better than we did last time. I know that probably most of you in this room will know quite a lot about the technical drivers, probably more than me. What do we need to do to make sure that we actually can keep this data, we can keep track of the information, we can pass it on securely? And that's not just about sensors, it's not just about BIM, it's not just about information management. It's also about making sure we've got contracts and procurement processes that are fit for purpose. It's about making sure that we're actually managing the asset throughout its life and not just at discrete stages. And ultimately, it's about creating a national digital twin. But I'm really clear that technology alone isn't going to solve this. It's about behavioural change. It's about people. So we need to develop people, and that skills education and training. We need to make sure we've got the regulations and the standards that actually will underpin all this and make it work. We need to help people know how they can use this information to make informed decisions. And we need to change the way people are thinking about their information, thinking about their data, thinking about how they could use it and how they could share it. One of the exciting things that's happened with us this year is the Construction Innovation Hub, which is a partnership between MTC, BRE and CDB as part of the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. Each centre has its own strengths. CDBB is looking at the digital side, MTC are looking at manufacturing kit of parts, and BRE are looking at that regulation, that verification, those standards. We're thinking about it as if we have 4 streams, if you like, at the beginning that are feeding in. So we have this manufacturing approach, we have the standards and compliance, we have an information management framework, and underneath everything we have to have security or security mindedness. And we hope that these will allow us to improve through life performance, through twins, through digital twins, through modelling and through simulations. And we're clear that doing that's the right thing to do, but why is it the right thing to do? Because we want to make better economic outcomes, we want to make a better society, a place where people are happier to live. And we also want to make sure that we're doing environmentally the right things, and the data will allow us to make those sort of choices. I want to talk a little about the Data for the Public Good and the National Infrastructure Commission. I mentioned earlier the DFTG. So in December last year before last now, the NIC published the Data for Public Good. It set out a series of challenges and a series of recommendations. And we're all fairly familiar with what the challenges are. We've got an increasing population. How are we going to find houses for them, schools for them, hospitals? How are we going to make sure that we can move them around to where they need to go? How can they get to work? How can they get to see their family? We want economic growth, but not at the cost of the planet. So we need to think about climate change and our environmental standards as well. And NIC have laid this out within Data for the Public Good, saying that data could hold the answer to a lot of these issues, or certainly part of the answer. So what is the role of data within this? Transport for London has already said that by releasing data publicly, they reckon that users are saving somewhere between 15 and 58 million. I know that's a big gap. It's a difficult number to calculate, but a lot of money is what they're saying. And they're doing that by linking public transport data and finding the value. But we need to move towards minimum levels of commercial confidentiality so that we can actually share that data, that information in a meaningful fashion. The recommendations for the Data of the Public Good were to create a digital framework so that we can effectively manage our information and make it secure and interoperable, to create or move towards creating a national digital twin, And let me say at this stage, I'm not talking one monolithic huge twin that's got all the data in the UK in. That just would not work. We're talking about a federated model of smaller twins and a multi-layered federated model. And they also said that CWB should set up a digital framework task group to provide coordination. And we're really clear it's not control, it's about coordination of the key players in this area. So to create a national digital twin, we needed two things. We need a conscience, a guiding principles of data and data sharing. And the publication late last year of the Gemini Principles saw us lay down what we thought those were. And we also need a roadmap, a prioritised plan of how do we get from here to there. And this should feed into the information management framework, which should allow this effective sharing of data in the built environment. The Gemini Principles, the first of those things, we've thought that it's got three things that it has to have. Any form of information management sharing has to have. It's got to have a purpose. If you don't know why you're doing it, then why are you doing it? And for us, that's about creating value. It's about finding insights, but fundamentally, it's about the public good. This is about doing something for the public good. It's got to be trustworthy. And there's a bit of tension here because it's got to be secure, but it's got to be open, and the data has to be of high quality. So how does one balance these things which at first sight can feel like they're in conflict, and on a smaller basis, actually sometimes they really are in conflict. We have to get around that. And it has to function, it has to work well. As I said, we think this is a federated model. We know that the data, the information has to be curated, it has to be curated well. We also know this is going to evolve. Technology is not going to stop. People are not going to stop evolving themselves. So it's not a, we've made it once, that's it. We know it's going to have to keep changing. This is one of these slides which looks really pretty up there, and I'm not going to ask you to read it. I'm really happy to share the slides if Pam's happy to distribute them. This is the roadmap. This is what we think needs to be done over the next 3 or so years to get to the next step of providing this information management framework. Let me be clear, we will not have a national digital twin at the end of 3 years, but we should have made some steps towards what is this framework, how does it work, how do we share data. We have 5 streams. One is the approach, what approach should we take? We need to make sure it's well governed. I'll come back to the commons because it's a very strange word. We need to look at the enablers. What are the enablers? What are the blockers that might stop us from doing this? And again, we need to help and support industry and society to change. The commons is a big piece around hard data science. And this isn't my background, so please don't ask me any technical questions on it. I can give you the top level view, but not the nitty gritty. So this is, how do you actually make that framework work? What do we need to do? What ontology do we have to have? How does that actually, when we're talking about ones and zeros, what do we need to do with it? And that's a huge piece of work. Once this is up and running, it will enable us to work on the next step with the National Digital Twin. But what is a digital twin? There are so many people who talk about digital twins. Some of them to me are just talking about a model. And I was involved, and I'm going to give away my age, in the very late 80s, in the very beginning of CAD. And some people would say, well, maybe a CAD design is a digital twin. Some people would say maybe Google Earth is a digital twin, and to some senses, yes, they are. Our view is that it's a realistic digital representation of something physical. But I would go one step further than that. I think that representation, you've got your physical asset, it will feed into the digital. You've got to then have your digital asset feeding back into the physical. So those interventions, for me, are what make it a digital twin and not a model or a simulation. So to recap, the DFTG had a whole load of deliverables that it has asked for. We've managed the first 2. We're working jolly hard on the second 2, and we're really happy to have people come and work with us to define these and to throw questions up there, because we're working with a wide range of people, but we also know there are lots of other people out there doing good work. It's very much an inclusive project, not an exclusive, we're off going to think about it and come up with the answer. And as part of that, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the Digital Twin Hub. And we're viewing this as a community, a web-enabled community, but a community of people, companies who are making serious progress with digital twins. So we've talked about asset owners, we've talked about cities, we've talked about universities, people who can add conversation, add insights into the debate about how does this work. A lot of the digital twins we have are embryonic. We need to learn from each other. How are things working? What isn't working? What questions do you need to ask? So we pulled together, we're in the process of pulling together a digital twin hub. Our 3 founding members are Sellafield, Anglian Water and Heathrow. We're lucky enough to have a waiting list. Once we have it set up and sorted, there will be many more companies involved, we hope. It's partly about, as I say, sharing experience and learning from each other's ideas, innovations and experience. It's partly about showcasing what digital twins can do, because there are a number of people sitting in boards who aren't yet convinced that digital twins are the things that can help change. It's about networking, it's about allowing the members to find people who can support them with their problems or find people with whom they collaborate. It's also about having a centralised register of where are the great digital twins. If somebody came up to me from government and said, can you give me an example? I would hope to be able to point to this and say, yep, look, here they are. These guys are doing fantastic work. And it's about finding out where are those gaps, where are the things that we don't know, where are the bits that we should be focusing on, so that we can go and fill those gaps and make it a more coherent picture. And it's also about promoting the adoption of this framework that I've been talking about, the information management framework, so that we can test it and we can make sure that it really, really works before we send it out to the wider world and say you should be using this for the National Digital Twin. I want to say a little bit about how we're working with the BIM Alliance. I don't have a slide for that, so I'm just going to talk. So we're really delighted that the ISO, and thank you, Anne, for all the work that you and your team have done on that the ISO is up and running. And I know there's more work to be done. We're really proud to be working with the BIM Alliance and with BSI to promote the adoption of the ISO. We've literally just put together a tender on looking at what's out there to measure the benefits of BIM and what should we be looking at. And we hope that we're going to be having more projects like that in collaboration with the BIM Alliance, so that we can come up with questions together that need to be answered and then go together and find the answer. So that's how we're hoping to work with you. Very much hoping that will be something that you're looking forward to doing with us, so that you'll come and talk to us and say, actually guys, this piece of work needs to be done. If it's something that we can be doing with you, we'd be really happy to. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to talk. If appropriate, I'd be very happy to answer questions.
Yes, please.
But nothing too technically difficult.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. I imagine there's a few questions, so please hands up and ask away. So we can pass the mic round if you want, or probably just shout out. Well,
Hi. What's been your biggest success so far, and what's the biggest challenge that you've had or see on the horizon?
no difficult ones.
How long have you got? There are lots of challenges in this field, and you probably know better than I do. So from actually getting the right people in the room is sometimes quite difficult. I would say our biggest success is getting together the Digital Framework Task Force, getting this diverse set of stakeholders sitting around the table and speaking, talking, discussing in a very collaborative sense about what needs to be done next. None of them is daft. They all know that there is a commercial side to everything, but around that table they're there to do something for the public good, and I'm really proud of the team that have got together and done that. The biggest challenge is to keep everybody aligned. I think there are so many people talking, and mostly talking a lot of sense, but if we go off at very slightly different angles, we could end up quickly looking at completely different things we can't then bring back together. This only works if we all work together. So the biggest challenge for me is actually keeping people going in the same direction. Not necessarily on exactly the same path, but at least in the same direction.
More questions? John?
We're starting to see digital twin emerge in people's tender documentations and EIRs now. Obviously you can't respond and say, yes, of course you can have a digital twin, but what would you say is the best approach to answering that question? Can we say we'll work with the digital twin hub, or is there still not enough there to work with?
I think the key is to ask them, what do they mean by a digital twin? Because there are some great fully functioning digital twins, but most of them are bounded. And I would say some of the best ones I see aren't in this industry. They're in aero and auto, who've been doing this for years, and they're very specific. They're not. Their issues are very different to ours. It's a very different landscape. We're always happy to work with people. We're commercially and technology agnostic, so we're not going to come up with a solution for any one person's particular project, but in a wider sense, how to get that sorted. Yes, please come and talk to us about it. Great. It would be really helpful.
Thank you.
I thought it was a really well thought through strategy. So yeah, you mentioned behaviour, and what's your thoughts about how you're going to impact on a very large industry and change behaviours? Strategy is great, but you then have to sell that strategy to an industry.
It's massively difficult. There are some people who are running so fast we can't keep up with them. They're out there, they're ready to go, and then there are people who I don't know. They've been doing it like this for 30 years and they don't see why they should change.
So the latest surveys are telling us customers or clients, their appetite's only about 20%, and that's the people who actually know what digital is. So there is a huge amount of government, local government, central government clients who haven't got a clue what we're talking about. So how do we get the message out and how do we change their behaviours?
For a start, what the BIM Alliance are doing is fantastic. You're here, you're talking, you're loud, you've got a very good media presence. We would hope to support that and put out similar and aligned messages. What are we doing on a day-to-day basis? We're in some of those government departments, talking to them, supporting them, trying to keep them aligned. As you know better than I, it's a massive job. It's a huge number of people. You can only touch a certain number. So it's about having those targeted interactions with people who you think can make a difference. The hope is, if you look at the sort of early adopters and the people who are almost before that, if you can influence them, if you can support them to make the change, that it will become, for the slower adopters and the tail, it will become so obvious that this is just so obviously the sensible thing to do that they will do it. So I think we certainly can't look at the whole of the market because it's just too big for anyone or any group of people to tackle. I think you need to target where you're working and try and support those people so they can be the ambassadors. Because me sitting in Cambridge saying, I think this is a fantastic thing, you should all do it, frankly, nobody should be listening to me. People should be listening to those guys and girls who are out there actually doing it, saying, this is why it's a fantastic thing. Come and look at mine. This is what it's doing. This is how it works. So it's about us supporting those people to be the ambassadors to spread the word.
Do you have an ambassadors programme?
We don't. And that's a damn good idea. We are putting together an industry partnership programme, but an ambassadors programme, thank you.
That's what you do, so maybe there's a synergy there potentially as well.
Just following up on the guy's point further on down the front there. We obviously passed the 2016 mandate,
Yes.
and there was some sort of mandate to say there was muted the thought there might be some sort of penalties or some sort of the fact that if I'm not doing something, there might be some reason to do it. We seem to have passed that. My conversations, and I'm not going to say who with, well, a lot of the major infrastructure owners out and about in the country are now looking at that and going, well, actually, if we don't do it, what's the penalty? What am I going to get hit by? Well, nothing. So therefore, is it worth me actually doing it? Yes, you can save me 20% of the next 10 years. Yes, you can save me whatever percentage over the next 10 years. But actually, I might retire in 5 years' time, or my tenure in this particular job is only the next 3 years. So why should I bother?
You don't do it, you're going to die.
Well, that's fine, but this is the, I don't care personally, as it were, okay. Okay, so,
I get your point.
okay, I think that's quite an unhelpful response there, because what I'm doing is I'm putting myself in the place of those clients out there. Those client organisations will exist 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years' time. It doesn't matter, they'll always be there, okay? But at the moment, the people in charge of those organisations aren't being hit if they're not doing this.
So I think it's a carrot and stick thing. So government clearly set up the 2016 mandate, and if my understanding is correct, and if I'm wrong, please shout, any publicly procured building has to comply with that. Now there is a it's very difficult to pin down whether one has complied or not, and legally, and I know May knows far better than I do, legally, what is BIM level 2, as it was then called? What is it? Has your proposal, does it fully comply? It's quite a difficult question to answer, and how you put that in your contract, how you work that through. That, I suppose, is the stick. So if you don't have that in place, whatever that is, you couldn't bid into this pot of projects. But from the carrot perspective, we should make it such that, I mean, there's certainly a piece around procurement and contracts, and how do you make people stop looking just at the capex and saying, okay, this is 100 million. This other project's 120, I'm going to go with 100. How do you get them to look at it saying, well, actually, over the lifetime of this project, this one's 250 million and this is only 200. And, working on the net present value, then this one is more expensive initially, but it saves me money in the long run. So that needs to be something that needs to change within the procurement process, within the industry. That needs to come in. But there should also be that thing, the benefits that you get from sharing your data should make your life easier on a personal level and on a corporate level. So until we can do that, it's a much more difficult sell.
Indeed, I completely get. I'm completely sold on that plan, and I'm really happy with that. But there is a hell of a lot of people in the organisations that I deal with that are the decision makers and the top level people that aren't procuring into the digital world because there's no penalties not to do it. A piece of work I want
to do, and I'm hoping we're going to get funded, is around making that case to those top level decision makers, whether it's C-level or the level below, so that they understand why it makes sense to do this digitally, so that they're not just looking at the numbers on their balance sheet, that they understand the whole thing. And we need to, I'm going to use the word educate, we need to educate those people to fully understand why this is damn important and we need to do it.
I completely agree with that. Education all the way, but I've been educating people around this world for 19 years on the BIM world, and you can keep educating people as long as you like, but unless there's a reason, financial or legal, for doing something, a lot of organisations
So it's a
won't
carrot
do
and
it.
stick. Is it legal? And I'd like to be running the world, but sadly I'm not. I don't have control of that. But is it financial? We can make that financial case. We should be able to make that financial case. So it becomes a case of, why would I do it any other way? This is so obviously the way to do it. So that's partly the education, but it's about making that case.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Also, what help in the short term there, just thinking about it, is in terms of the central government departments, as you've mentioned, there's the Crown Commercial Framework that's coming out that encompasses things like off-site, BIM, and other things. So any centrally procured, whether it's a framework already in existence like ESB, DFE, all of that will come under this overarching framework which has those requirements for tender. But again, there's no penalty going back if it's not procured that way, but that should help encourage that central departments, potentially. So, any other questions before we move on? Rob again.
Sorry, me again.
Go down to.
I thought that was a really good point made by, sorry, I don't know names, Ian behind me. I assume when you talk about carrot and stick and you talk about the C-suite, are you literally talking about publicly procured projects?
I'm talking across the board.
So
it's not. There is a big place for publicly procured projects because that's a huge amount of money. But there are also private projects. It makes sense for those people to think about it for their commercial organisations. But again, all the benefits that roll out, the social, the economic, the environmental, we need to make the case to them as well.
Time for one more question. So.
That's an opinion, not a question. Sorry. No, it is a question. Sorry, Sue Butcher, just practicing. Thank you for your presentation. I was thinking about what Ian said, and I think an integrated communication strategy is necessary, which doesn't just include incentives and legal changes, but also proper communication with the general public. And I just thought I'd mention making tax digital. As an example, I'm an SME. So SMEs all over the country at the moment are doing their first digital tax returns. And it's causing absolute hell. And that's because the communications of it have been rubbish. But people are going to have to do it because it's the law. So my question is, are you talking to the shadow cabinet? The shadow cabinet.
We are apolitical, and we are certainly talking to the civil service, and we will talk to people of any political hue who would wish to discuss it with us. This needs to be a success no matter what party is in power. It's an apolitical issue as far as I'm concerned. So we will talk, and you also should be talking to anybody who'll listen, and whether they're in power or on the opposition, we need to be having those conversations.
I think you'd get a better response if you spoke to the opposition at the moment than if you spoke to the other side. And, yeah, given the way things are going, who knows what's going to happen in the next 6 months. But if this really is important, and looking at a roadmap, there's an awful lot of things in 2019 on that roadmap, so it's already out of date.
No, we're
optimistic.
doing them at the moment. We're in 2019. It's not December yet. I don't have to finish them.
Yes, yeah.
We will have them. I hope
Yeah,
we will
we're
have them
talking
done
about
by the end of the
behavioural
year.
change and stuff. This is a generational thing, and therefore it's really important to sort of think about getting legislation in place with the proper communication. Otherwise, the people will resist it. Anyway, that was my
So
point.
I think there's a discussion around whether legislation or regulation and standards is the way to go. I would hope that it will be so obvious that this is the right thing to do, that people will be doing it because they want to do it rather than because they have to do it. Now, that might be a pipe dream, and we're not closing down the conversations with government and with the opposition, because one needs to talk to. The Band-Aid came out of government. We need to be talking to people to make sure things happen, but we also need to get on with getting the things done that we can do now, while there's all this turmoil going on and maybe other things are at the front of politicians' minds.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Just while we're getting the screen back, hopefully. So it's the next up, view from the bridge. So can I invite our UK BIM Alliance chair, Anne Kemp, up to the front? And I'd just like to take this a few seconds just to, for those of you who aren't aware, Anne was recently awarded an OBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours for a tireless work.
Thank you very much. So I will start by saying that's really humbling to have that honour. But the important thing for me is that it was in recognition of chairing the UK BIM Alliance, so it wouldn't have happened without the Alliance, and that means you. And it wouldn't have happened with all of the many people who've been working over years to get us to the place where actually BIM is now being recognised as a fundamental step towards what Alexandra's been talking about with the digital twin side of things. So for me, in accepting the honour, I felt very daunted by that, because I don't feel that as an individual, it's not about me as an individual. It is about the movement. It's the recognition of the movement. It's the recognition of those people. So I feel really humbled that I've been picked out, if you like, for that. But also I'm really excited, because this is not the end of the journey. This is absolutely about re-energising and saying, right, let's go for it now. It's great that I feel that we can really build on that as the Alliance. I think there's some wonderful things going on now with what Alexandra's been talking about, that we can really galvanise, we can support, we can grow that. So all of the challenges that Ian has spoken about, that Sue has raised in the questions to come before, that's what we really need to be working on and being passionate about and be minded about, really, because it is going to take a lot of energy and a lot of determination to get to that point. I think one of the things that will contribute to us going forward is whatever comes out of the Hackett report. There is that review at the moment. I think it's a really important review. Do go and have a look at it. But this reference to the golden thread of information is absolutely key. It's what the original 1192 suite of documents was helping us build on. And it is going to be acted upon. It looks like there could be regulations coming out. It won't just be about high-rise buildings. There are comments already going forward. It would be really good for you to add those comments that it's about all buildings, and actually it would be really useful if actually it was encompassing infrastructure as well. So if you haven't had a look at that report, it is out for consultation. I think it finishes towards the end of July. So do go and have a look. So a view from the bridge, so obviously the OBE, and that is amazing. And I suppose not only do I want to acknowledge all of you and the people who've we've followed and we've built from, so it's very much standing on the shoulders of giants, isn't it? But we also need to inspire the next lot of people coming through. So the succession planning and bringing people in is really, really important. I think one of the traps we could get into as the UK BIM Alliance is that we talk to ourselves. There is a problem with the word BIM, the acronym BIM. Actually, the people who need to be really thinking about managing information and how that can help on decisions are people who do not know about BIM or get turned off by BIM. So actually it's fantastic what we're doing as communities, and Alexandra, thank you for that, but it isn't good enough, because actually we should be speaking to all the people who don't know anything about this and who are the SMEs. So I think Pam will be talking later on about the SME campaign that we've been working on. So let's not sit back on our laurels. I know you won't. I certainly am not. I do feel really energised by the honour. But I guess the other thing I want to acknowledge is my family and the friends who've supported me, because for all of us, it does take a strain, doesn't it, sometimes, and you go and you're just getting really cheesed off. They've been absolutely brilliant to me. I wouldn't be able to be here now if I didn't have such a supportive family and friends. And I think that's really important, is that we are very human. Each of us individually needs to be supported and encouraged. So let's keep on remembering that this is a movement. It is about friendship. It is about collaboration. So also we need to challenge each other as well and keep ourselves lean and mean, if you like. But if I talk about a little bit more sort of from the view from the bridge, so if we start with the ISO standards, so ISO 19650, as you know, the first two parts got published over the new year. So part one, the concepts and principles, absolutely represents the foundations for what Alexandra has been talking about today around Digital Built Britain. So it is absolutely about talking about managing information through whole life, starting with strategy and planning. So nothing exists as yet, for instance, but actually the world exists already. The environment already exists. Society already exists. The built environment actually is already there. As Alexandra was saying, 99% of what will exist next year already exists. So we need to be thinking about the existing environment. The ISO 19650 takes that into account, and it is thinking about operations and maintenance. It's thinking about what decisions need to be made. It anticipates what is being called the digital twin, or the national digital twin at the moment. So we have actually got the fundamental foundation for what this will evolve into. So I think where I'm really going to, and Alexandra may wish to kick me at this point, but certainly we were talking about design, operate, I've forgotten them all.
Operate and integrate.
Thank you, and integrate. All of those concepts are in there in the ISO 19650. We are moving away from talking about levels. There is no rush, no race towards the next level. We are landing, Okay, UK BIM framework is landing, or whatever we do eventually decide to call it. There is a conversation going on at the moment that a framework has landed. We're establishing with the UK BIM package, so it's not going to go away. Get used to it, accept it, live it, breathe it. But people who don't need to know that there's BIM there, we can integrate those processes into our organisations so that actually everybody is managing their information. They just may not know about it particularly. So we'll do it by stealth. So rather than thrusting it down their mouths, actually we can do a lot of this by stealth. And I think that's a really important thing. But we need to get the processes in place. We need to get the classification systems in place. So there is a lot of work still to be done. That's what's going on, not only at international level, but at European level and at UK level as well. So I know we've got a few people in the room who are working really hard on those standards. And then I think what's been particularly, if you ask what I think is most successful for what we're achieving at the moment, is the guidance framework for ISO 19650. So there's quite a few of you in the room who are helping to put together guidance to allow the implementation of ISO 19650 to feel far more accessible and pragmatic than perhaps we got to by the end of the development of the 1192 suite. So we've got part 2 of the ISO 19650, which, yes, it is about the design and construction phase. So, you know, if we could choose to, we would absolutely have started with the operations one. But what I'm excited about is we are working on part 3, which is the operations and maintenance part and whole life, and we're working on part 5, which is security. So what I want to alert you to is that part 5 is going to be coming out to public consultation. If not the next week, it will be in the next month. So we're just waiting for ISO to publish that. It will go out. We will put out an alert to you, and I would urge you to review those and put in comments, because as convener of the ISO 19650, I cannot do anything unless you've submitted a comment. Put the comment in, and then we have to debate it at the international level and respond to it. But I cannot do anything. If you come to me privately and say, I don't like that, can you go and talk? I can't do anything. It has to be submitted formally. Part 3, again, I'm really excited. It's taken a lot of work, but we're learning from the fact that our good old 1192 Part 2 and Part 3 seemed quite disparate, didn't it? Didn't really, it sort of did that, particularly when we're talking about common data environments. So what we're doing with the part 3 for ISO 19650 is to get a really good match. So you do get that flow of information through, which absolutely will help with then moving to the Digital Built Britain vision. That should be coming out for public consultation in September, maybe early October. So again, we'll put an alert out to you. Please, please comment on that so that we can get it into the best form possible. One of the other things that I've been doing last week at the meetings was I'm convener for the strategy for ISO for the built environment. And it's absolutely, again, working at not only what the UK is looking at for the future in the next 10, 15 years, but actually what's happening internationally as well. So we will be able to feed that back to you about what's happening internationally, and that will be fed in to the what's happening with the Centre of Digital Built Britain. So that's from a standards perspective. Moving to building smart, again, we're trying to get a better relation of UK and Ireland chapter with international. So Dave Owens, David Glennon have been working really hard with Nick Nisbet as well to get an alignment with the rooms internationally. So you should be seeing that and allowing the BIM fours, like infrastructure, for instance, to really have clear sight into what's going on internationally. there's a heck of a lot going on in Building Smart International from China and Korea on roads and rail. And in a way, it's quite scary that they are now dominating the field on what's coming out of Building Smart on an open standards point of view. And as UK and Ireland, we aren't very visible at the moment. We're not really influencing things very well. So again, what we're really keen for is to get new blood in. Is that there are people who are now starting to move into retirement and so forth, who are taking quite a lot of knowledge away with them. We want to kind of grab that. I know Emma isn't here today, Emma Hooper. She wanted to do a bit of a brain transfusion from Nick Nisbet to herself, for example. But it's that sort of thing, is that we really need those conversations to be going on, and for us to be starting to make standards seem a little bit more relevant and fun to us, and be much more timely and flexible in its input. So a lot to be done, but then it's a complete, utter waste of time developing these standards if they're not understandable, if they're not practical, if people don't want to actually implement them. So we may perceive that there's a need. If there isn't a demand, we're in trouble. So it's really starting to galvanise that demand. So I think as the Alliance, with the communities, with Jill, with Andrew and with Pam, and forgive me, I'm forgetting people's inputs here. That's what we really need to be looking at now, is who do we need to be really reaching out to? Let's challenge ourselves. So I've covered the standards. I've covered that. With BIM for clients now, thank you very much. Wonderful prompter here. Right, excellent, good. So one of the things we've been doing with Centre of Digital Built Britain is looking at the interfaces. BIM for clients now, we're going to be managing. There's a meeting in 2 weeks' time, is it, Pam? So again, we want to make really sure it's not just public sector, it's private sector as well, to really help them to engage, to be motivated, to build on, for instance, Richard Saxon's report and make them more energised. So talking about what Ian's been challenging on is, well, why would they? Why should they? And I think it's telling stories like Grenville, actually, and that golden thread of information, which is really going to start helping us. So, yeah, well, you could have a stick. We can continue to have those sorts of conversations with government. But I think the more that we can be saying to you, do or die, really, you won't survive in a global market unless you start to shift into a digital mode of thinking, knowing what the outcomes are that you desire and require, the better. So BIM for clients, we very much want to. I'm really pleased that it's Gatwick in particular who's pushing on that, and I would hope also that we will get interaction from the public sector ISO transition group. So I'm involved with that group as well, obviously as convener of ISO 19650, helping them to understand the implications for themselves. Also with the Home Nations, I've been talking with the Home Nations Working Group. So it's really making sure as the Alliance that we are in step with what CDBB are doing. So I think hopefully you will have noticed that the British Standards Institution, Centre of Digital Built Britain and the Alliance have been working really hard to develop joined communications. So when the ISO 19650 was first released, during the transition, and with the guidance framework, we are all working together to make sure that as far as possible, we can move away from the umpteen different flavours of 1192 and have much more a unified view of what the UK approach to managing information is going forward. So we're landed, it's arrived. Don't try and race ahead to anything else because it will naturally evolve from this. So as the Alliance, it makes things simple for us. Absolutely, we had set ourselves this 2020 75%. Not quite sure what that meant. So May, with Sarah Rock, we've got the really useful Rock Winfield report. Continuing that work is BIM level 2 was a concept. So government are now saying BIM level 2 was more of a concept which was evolving. So how could you possibly measure it? We want to get away from that because that was really unhelpful from the point of view of implementation. But we do need to be able to find clear KPIs which can motivate, can allow people to measure where they're at, what else they need to do. My prompter, what else do I need to cover?
You have covered everything, Anne. So I suppose would you like to fill in any questions now? Do you want to do it later on when we do ask you?
Up to you. So, well, I suppose what I would want to do, and this is really tricky, is that and so many of you are actively involved, but if I may, I know you were going to do it, but I would like to just emphasise the Alliance is about you. It is about the movement. It's about everything that's happening out there. The exec needs to be really lean and mean. We do not want it to be sucking in loads of energy because we want the energy and the doing to be out here with you, with the projects and with others as well. So the Alliance does not need to be doing everything. The exec certainly can't be doing everything. That's not what we're there for. It's purely to enable things to happen or for us to signpost where things are happening and where you can get information. So it's really helping that collaboration. Having said which, the exec are to some extent invisible. Actually, if they're doing their job, a lot of them should be invisible. But I would like to fully acknowledge them now. So we have Martin Penny, who's vice chair, David Glennon, who isn't here because he's now doing work out in Saudi Arabia, but he's also been supporting from a vice chair point of view and the Building Smart UK&I. He has been working co-chair with implementation with Sarah. So Sarah is absolute godsend, has been working really, really hard and managing the guidance framework, which, as I say, I'll let Sarah talk about the guidance framework later on, but thank you to yourself. We then, on the operations side, we have Stephen Holmes. Where are you, Stephen? And we've got Sean. And again, I think they'll talk a little bit about more about how they support you there. And then, of course, we've got engagement. We've got Andy Bootle, who you've already been hearing from, and Pam as well, who's worked really hard to arrange today. So I hope you didn't mind me taking a little bit of time on that, but it is the unsung heroes, and this is where the OBE, keep it in perspective, is it is only me, and there's a heck of a lot of other people who work really, really hard to make all of this possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. We are doing a bit of a Q&A with that team and just introduced a little later, so if we can field in any questions for Anne, please save them for then and we'll answer them as a team. So next up, an update from engagement. So I want to, Pam, could you come and join us up here, please?
You can put the next slide up if you're.
Events is first, so that's your absolute
So
speciality.
I'm going to change the order slightly because I've got a number of co-presenters today. I've got Rob, Jamie and Alistair presenting. I think I might have spelled your name wrong.
No, that's good. I quite like that.
Oh, sorry, I've just noticed that. So I'll come on to that in a moment. As Anne mentioned, SME campaign update. So we had a workshop 2 weeks ago with a number of volunteers who got involved to create a campaign to target and help support SMEs. Out of that workshop, there's a number of actions which I need to put into a plan, and I will share that with you via the newsletter at the end of this month. So that'll come, well, actually it'll come next week. So it'll be out next week, an idea of what we plan to do for the SMEs. If you remember the last forum meeting we had, I gave out post-it notes and you had 3 questions to answer. So you've all got involved and it's taking that information and creating a campaign out of it. So that will be coming soon. Product Data Working Group, so PDWG. This is the State of the Nation on the Product Data report that was published in October last year. We had feedback that was open till the end of last year. We have then since had a meeting to go through the feedback and go through actions. And I'd like to say we've actually taken those actions to the next step. But I'm going to be totally honest, I've got Trish and Matt in the room, plus Sue, who was involved in the project earlier on, and say due to bandwidth, we haven't been able to progress those actions. We had a call on Monday this week just to go through some of what needs to be done. There's a fair bit that needs to be done. What I will say is we will need additional volunteers. That initial working group, fantastic work that they've all done. But now out of that, there are a number of potential projects that will come out of it, and we'll feed it through the Alliance project side of things, but we will need volunteers to get involved and support those activities. So again, some of that hopefully will come out in the newsletter next week. We got events twice, so
I just noticed that.
I was going to link, it's not up there, but no, yeah, we'll come to that. But events, so on the Alliance website, you will notice that there is now an updated events page. That all the events listed on that page are either hosted through our BIM regions, through our BIM 4 groups, or the special interest groups, or they are events that the Alliance are involved in directly. Okay, I can't show you, but on the page there is a button at the bottom. If you have an event that you would like listed on that page, small form to fill out, it'll automatically create an email, which we will then action and put that event up there. So the most recent events, up-to-date list of events, is the region's website. The Alliance website. Okay. With events in mind, I want to introduce Rob Toon, where he's at the back. Rob, if you come forward for me. Rob's going to talk about an event that he's putting together under the Alliance, and it's called This Is Change. So Rob's going to talk through that. I will then ask, sorry, can you just go back one? I will then ask Jamie to talk about BIM for Water and some of the work they're doing, because I think it'd be worth to hear what one of the BIM 4s are doing, for example. And then Alistair's going to talk about the Association of Data-Driven Design as well, which I think is an interesting topic for you all. I will jump in between those, but I just wanted to share that with you now. Hand over to Rob. It's all yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me at the back? Fantastic. This voice is only going to get huskier. I used to blame it on Man United, but the season's over, so I guess I'm just shouting at the gossip columns at the moment because nothing's happening. So my name's Rob Toon, or Robert Toon, as my mum calls me, and I'm a BIM coordinator working for Keir Regional Building Northwest. Now, possibly unlike most of you in here, I've been in the BIM team for since end of January, so I'm still very green in terms of being a BIM coordinator. But something that I wanted to get into before I started talking about my Alliance project is that everyone in this room, you've been involved in this for a good number of years. And okay, I've been involved for a good number of months, but I've been an outside onlooker of what you guys have been doing in the BIM space and what you've achieved today. So just a quick bit of praise from me, flattering and all that, so you're a bit more kind to me. But just keep on trucking, keep pushing through with it, because you guys in the room are the next wave of change that the industry needs. And that leads me on to a very nice segue about what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about a UK BIM Alliance project that I put through for, I guess, funding, but it's actually free. That's why it got through, probably. And in true presentation style, I'm just going to keep it simple, nice bold font, and mainly just waffling on for 10 minutes. So I'm going to start with why. And to be honest, my project is born out of frustration more than anything else. Not frustration with my day job and my role, or the industry as a whole. I absolutely love construction. I'm genuinely construction's #1 fan. I'm that big a fan that every time me and my fiance try and buy a picture for the house, it is normally of a building. So there's some tension there in my personal life. But my frustration is born out of all the negative press that the industry keeps seeing. Quite a lot of it is correct. We're not perfect. No one's perfect. But the people in Silicon Valley aren't perfect yet. We never hear about their equality and diversity problems. We rarely hear about Tesla's problems with the production line. Yet every single day in the press, there's always something wrong with the industry. Crossrail's over budget. HS2, is it going ahead? Is it not? Someone being killed on site. Grenfell, what's that mean for the industry? And it's all negative, negative, negative. On top of that, we hear every single day, again in the trade press, about companies suffering. My very own company, Kia, who I've been with since graduating, since an undergrad, suffering at the moment, but you've got Carillion, Interserve, Galliford Try struggling as well. So a bit more negativity. And then you see stuff around how the productivity and efficiency of the industry is crap. And you think, right, okay. And that the industry's ripe for disruption, all right, okay, again. I did spend some time working in the innovation team at Kia, which is, yeah, it was a great to be a part of. And you meet with people like Google and they say, yeah, I've been meaning to get into your industry for a while, and that panics you a little bit, especially when you go to our sites and it's kind of like, yeah, we're just getting involved in the day job. So I guess that's a bit of negativity and a bit of frustration. But the thing that frustrates me more than anything else, and I guess it's the thing that, excuse my French, pisses me off more than anything else, is bad leadership. And I don't mean bad leadership in terms of the bosses that I've had or the leaders that I've had. I see it everywhere within the UK. And it just so happens that I'm in the construction industry. So when I see examples of bad leadership, it really does frustrate me. And one thing, and my main reason why I'm doing this project, is because I believe that people deserve to be managed and led based on their motivations and the content of their personality, not via a process that governs them. And we're seeing it more and more in these hard times that people go to the back of the queue and it's all about underlying profit. It's now more and more the lack of investment in technology when there should be more investment in technology. And all these challenging times, because it is a challenging, turbulent time for everyone. And I think the project that I'm going to talk to you about is all about using this adversity and this negativity to actually try and find a positive and celebrate construction. It's now more than ever, we need to look at a different way of leading the industry, a different way of championing our people. And it's now that we should be putting people before process, people at the centre of transformation, and manage people by their character, their motivations, and what gets them up in the morning. Because, believe it or not, the majority of people get into the industry for the love of it, not because of the paycheck at the end of the day. People still get into construction for the love of a big yellow digger or a giant crane, like I do. Whenever I see one of those turn up on site, it does get me excited. Not in that way. And it's for that love of construction is what I'm doing about it. So what I've created is a bit of a brand, a bit of a pixelated brand called This Is Change. In short, what this is about celebrating construction. Not celebrating construction in terms of necessarily the projects, the technology, the processes or the companies that are in the industry, but celebrating the people that make construction what it is. And it is an absolutely brilliant industry. So this event aims at celebrating those people while shining a spotlight on the areas where we can improve and giving the industry some much needed collective leadership. Like I say, I've had some great leaders in the past. I've had some great bosses. I still do have. There's still some great leaders within Kia itself. There's great leaders within this room. But we need that collective leadership. And this is what This Is Change is about. In short, it's a TED Talk for the construction industry. And I've managed to blag myself some space to hold it. So it's going to start off in Manchester, because that is the centre of the universe at the moment. And
Is that because you live there?
now I live there, yeah. If I still lived in Cambridge, it would be in Cambridge, yeah. So it's taking place on the 25th of September, which is a date you've all got in your calendars because it's the date of the next forum. So come to the next one, please. Starts at 5:30. There's no cost, and we've got some great speakers lined up. And I'm going to flick back to the brand, actually. So, like TED Talks, we are going to film it. We're going to edit that. We're going to share that across the industry. At the same time, I'm creating a website, again, under the same title, where we're going to have it as a place where people can share thought leadership and share blogs. Whether that's anonymously or whether that's for a bit of shameless self-promotion, as is what I'm doing today. But I want to create this place where we can come together as an industry and share best practice, thought leadership, share those things that make the industry as good as it is and as good as it can be moving forward. So again, all I ask from you today is when you see it come up on the Alliance news feeds, on social media, we're going to be putting it through Regions Northwest as well. So when you see it there, if you are in the region in the Northwest on that day, please pop in, please sign up for the event. But all I ask is for your support. And I truly believe that with the support of the industry partners that I've got so far, such as CIOB, National Association for House Builders, Kia, Lang O'Rourke, J. Murphy and Sons, the Alliance itself, ICE, Construction Institute in the Northwest, we're starting to get a load of backing for it. And all that is putting their name against this as being something positive for the industry. And all I ask is for you guys to do the same. And just keep an eye out for when things start to get a bit more live over the summer. So thanks for giving me the bandwidth to have a bit of a waffle, a bit of a rant. And I'll be around all day because Andy's going to buy me a pint afterwards. And so, yeah, come and find me afterwards if you want any more questions. Cheers.
So the one thing I forgot to mention, so with regards to this, there will be a registration site going live as soon as Rob shares the branding with me. So that will go live as soon as possible. And like he says, it will come through the newsletter. This morning we had the BIM Communities Chairs meeting take place. So we have, like I say, BIM regions, BIM 4s and special interest groups. We try and get the chairs together a minimum of twice a year, and it's to share best practice and discuss ideas going forward. There was a lot of conversation around events. There was a lot of conversation about how BIM regions and BIM 4 should work together. And one reason that I've asked Jamie to present is around the BIM 4 Water side of things. So BIM 4 Water have presented at a BIM Regions East event in the past and have presented at other events that BIM Regions are host. So I'm going to ask Jamie to come up, talk. He's got literally 10 minutes, which we had this conversation. He's got a fair few slides. That's why I'm saying he's got 10 minutes. Next slide. And he will share his thoughts. Just before you start on that, I will also, after Jamie's presented, before Allister talks, talk about the CDE selection process that we went through, and also talk about the affiliates program. Just remind me if I don't do that, but those are the other two topics I need to cover before we go for afternoon break. Okay? Jamie, over to you.
I'll be quick. Yeah, the BIM Port Group, I'm very excited about this. So I took over as chair this month. Just sort of put up a bit about the history. So I'm the third chair of the group. You see, we started back in 2013 as with others. Quickly set out terms of reference. We had a couple of working groups. They've changed a little bit now, and I'm going to discuss them in more detail because that's quite exciting. That's probably where all our activity happens. Quarterly meetings, we're signed up to the charter, etc. And we're doing some good stuff. So let's whiz on to where we are now because that's in the past, right? 210 members. I think that's quite good for a BIM 4 group. If anyone wants to comment on that. Clients. Huge focus for the clients. We've got 20 of the 26 water companies across the UK. 16 consultants, 15 contractors and 46 suppliers. Right down to the little small stuff. These are like little control panels right up to big suppliers like the one that I work for, etc. The groups, we're going to go over them in a little bit more detail. But you got the owner-operator groups, of course, that's closed, that's client only. Standard libraries, benefit from case studies, 4D working group. But interestingly, the new one, I'll grade it out. We'll have a meeting in July, and we'll decide whether that fits in with under the BIM for Water bracket or it sits outside. And that aligns with the Centre for Digital Build Britain and is National Digital Twins for Critical Infrastructure. So there's one for energy, but I'm really excited to see where that goes. And like I said, I'm the third chair. My steering group's quite strong. We've got 10 members on that. We're just doing a bit of nominations at the minute, and that's all exciting. We've actually got someone from legal coming in, so that's quite an interesting new thing because it's always engineering types, isn't it? And we've got a comms team, so they do all the LinkedIn and Davidson doing some Sorry, Andy's doing some photos for me, so I can do a post, whatever.
Can you just turn this way a bit more?
Like this, smile.
And then there'll be here a bit more at the back. So chuck it backwards.
So these are the owner operators. Of course, Thames Water from down here. Don't know, is there any owner operators in? No. Might be alright. So yeah, 20 of them. They're good peeps. They meet 4 times a year. Sometimes they're a bit reluctant to do actions and things, but they did write this guidance document. It's a bit old now. We rebranded the old BIM for Water logos. Maybe need to update that. Revitalise it. In fact, one of the projects that we're discussing at the minute is a maturity metric. So like the Project 13 maturity metrics, is to say, you know, where are you and what should it look like if you're doing good information modelling, management, etc. One of the current projects on at the minute is about information requirements, so exchange information requirements, these sort of things, trying to align them or get some common good practice. So that's an exciting little group. I chaired this for the previous 2 years. I've just handed that over to someone at Anglian Water. This is quite an active group, 18 clients within that. Links to these guys, WIMES, and that's Water Industry Mechanical Electrical Specifications. You see, I like to keep that as an acronym, right? And that's a bit like it. It's for procurement of water industry kit. We've done a lot of work with them to develop product data templates. That's come on a long way. We're actually at a point now where we're looking into procuring a system, a solution to create them. So we have a development procedure, which is an industry standard for agreeing on what attributes you want to be collecting for particular products. And it's agreed. And now we're into the nitty gritty. So we're into the classification, we're into the ontology of that. And that's not something that we can deal with as a group. That's expert work. So that's where we are with that stuff. So that's interesting. Let's move on. And of course, I've put this in, but it's all about moving away from documentation and getting it from the manufacturer into your asset management system, right? So we're quite keen to get that cracked to the water industry. That's fun. These guys are pretty active with benefits and case studies. So they're meeting approximately, say, 3 times a year. And they're collecting our case studies. We've got 15 of these now. That's exciting. Yeah, so water industry projects. You can go and view them on we're looked after by British Water, but they're on the website. And they're good reference cases, etc. It's quite nice to get people to give up that information. There we go. This is a new group, 4D task group. It's looked after by Claire. She's at Anglian Water. They're quite active with this sort of stuff. And again, it's about planning, scheduling projects, the time aspect. So they're off working. She's on about doing some documents from that group. So a benefits capture report, workflow, product lifecycle, and the schedule import synchronisation guide. So that could be exciting reads. The communications group. This is sort of an ad hoc group, but they're putting together like a marketing strategy. So how do we measure where we're moving? So are we measuring members on the LinkedIn channel or visitors to the website or people that sign up? How do we promote ourselves, etc., etc. Attracting people. We're supported by British Water, which is an industry group. So they help us out with web space and sending out notifications, getting people to come into meetings, etc. We did this. This is interesting. So we did this get this award out in May, and this was a BIM for Water award for the water industry. We had 16 entries, and of course it generated case studies, which is good. It was a sneaky way of getting case studies in, so we can share that. And it's got a press release, and the winners of that was Northumbrian Water with Wood and Intus, joint venture type project. So that's good stuff. After that, we did an exhibition. In fact, David Owens isn't there today, is he? But he joined us on that, so we've got the UK BIM Alliance stand there. That was quite good. What I did find though, we didn't really have a theme. There was no structured sort of topic to it. It's sort of a bit ad hoc in it. So, what do you do? So we're actually putting together a small group at the minute that's going to formulate something a little bit better, a bit more structured to this. So if we do it again, or we get an opportunity for it again, we'll have something just to get out of the box and go and deliver. So that was quite an interesting thing to go and do. What's that exhibition? Oh no, right. Talks and conferences. Done quite a few of these. Either as like guest speaking. That one was at the NEC the other day, and then obviously setting up our own. It's more about spreading the word and trying to share what we're doing. So these are in addition to the 4 meetings we have a year. One's a BIM conference, and then there's 3. There's a summer, autumn, and the winter. In fact, the summer's next week, Tuesday in Manchester. And there it is, look. Excuse me. The focus here, what we're talking about here, is the benefits. So when I stepped into Chow, I was promised I'd write out a vision, a bit of a where do we want to be in the next 5 years, and what am I going to try and do in 2 of that. And this sort of all feeds into that. So I'm sort of raising the question, what's your return on investment as a client? Buy data once, don't buy it twice, etc. So that's what we're trying to realise there. So that's off in Manchester, and for the communications and that, one of the guys has got I think it's called Biteable. It's like a little video thing. She made these little videos and you put them on LinkedIn. So if you found us on LinkedIn, you'd see these videos. They're quite good. It's pretty nifty stuff. It's only 300 quid. So the next steps, that is the 2-year plan and the BIM for Water Vision. So I'm sketching that out at the minute, and it focuses on what are our industry challenges at the minute. So we've got population growth, water scarcity, resilience, affordability, all this sort of stuff. But then I'm trying to twist it around and say, what are we doing with information modelling, and how are we going to tackle that? And I'm sharing this with thought leaders. So the next person I'll be talking to on that will be Mark Ender. Mark Ender's working with the Centre for Digital Built Britain on the the whole digital framework task group thing. So that's interesting stuff. Just finished the steering group nominations. Like I said, we've got that legal application at the minute, so that's exciting. And then there's a couple of things there. The academic and institution linked. On the academic side, it was more of a conversation that happened, and it's all about bringing in, where's the succession planning, where are the young professionals? So we're on about trying to get a group started for these early career professionals group. So that's trying, and there's 2 things to this, because you haven't got all the time in the world, and it's all voluntary work, right? So we think if we got students on board, we could sort of give them a little bit of work, like a little project, and they'll do some quality work for us. So there's that going on. We're doing or supporting a master's project which is looking at sustainability and BIM in the water industry. So this is about collecting information that relates to your carbon footprint, etc. So that's with is it Anglian Ruskin University. And that's where we are. And this is interesting. So we've got a call at 8 o'clock in the morning. This next week, and it's an Australian leg of the BIM for Water in Australia. So this is with Sydney and Melbourne Water. So they've sort of seen what we've been doing, picked up on it, and I don't know if they're going to copy it, or it would be quite interesting to see where that goes. That was my timing, Pam.
Well, you're out of time, but thank you. Yes. Thanks, Jamie. Brilliant. We'll do a bit of a Q&A at the end of this sort of topic for any of the speakers, so we will cover that.
I'm going to let Allister present his piece. I'm just going to bring a PDF.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sorry.
Allister, thank you.
Thanks very much.
You need that for the PDF. That's probably one way you probably have to click on.
Sorry. Could you put the There's a PDF on the desktop that we need to open up. Which I can put on the it's around the side. Okay, so we'll just wait for your presentation. I'll just update them on the affiliate side of things. So from an affiliate, we have an affiliates program going on at the moment, and this is a group of very passionate and engaged people who are working on putting together a package to reach out to industry organisations and trade memberships, trade unions, whatever you want to call them. So there's a group, I'm going to say around 10 people. Gary, correct me if I'm wrong?
Around that, yeah.
So Gary Fannin is leading the group with support from myself and Andy. And the plan is we have a targeted list of 10 organisations that we will work with. And the plan is to get them on board ASAP. there was a meeting that took place last week, and an idea was formed to bring the industry organisations together in September for a meeting where we talk to them all together. That in itself will be challenging because industry organisations like to do their own stuff, but if one, without naming names, if one organisation sees that their competitor is attending an event, we're hoping that they will then want to say, yes, we want to attend that event. So more information around affiliates will be shared again in the newsletter. But for now, I'm going to hand over to you, Alistair. Go for it.
Hi everyone. I'm Allister Lewis. I'm the head of technology at Air Chamberlain Gaunt, and what I'd like to talk to you about today is the creation of a new digital voice for professionals in the industry. And this is based out of my own experience, where over the last 15, 20 years, I've gone from a sort of traditional professional architect background into more 3D, into BIM, and then moving into a sort of data-driven environment. And I was finding that within the industry that there isn't a voice for someone like me, so, you know, the RIBA, RICS. And I've conducted some research around this that basically tried to say, you know, what is data-driven design, where are we going? And it's interesting that we've talked a lot about data today, probably more so than BIM in itself. And I do think it's a good time for this organisation to actually be established. So I conducted some research where I talked to professionals who are using either a lot of kind of BIM activities or data-driven design activities across different, partly in America, partly in this country as well, and identified that these are the sort of areas that this new profession are starting to use, which aren't represented in the existing organisations. So we're looking at use of different data completely from what we're used to usually, automation and coding, some level of leadership, how we move the industry forward, and I think pretty much everyone in this room is probably conscious of how we are trying to move things forward and be leaders, and using more scientific or evidence-based approaches to what we do. As part of that, I was looking at what kind of skills would be involved with that. So again, looking at organisations like the RIBA, are they accommodating that at the moment? The answer is no. And what we found was there's a completely different set, or at least a more advanced set of skills that are actually needed now. Okay, so we're looking at things like research skills, being a lead data collaborator. What does that look like? How does it work? A lot of the people I spoke to are starting to use this area to move their practices forwards. Thinking about being more of a hybrid scientific or creative professional, basically. So not pigeonholed into one area, but actually thinking about things in a much broader spectrum. So what I wanted to try and do is kind of who's invited, who's involved. The answer to that is pretty much everyone. And what I think probably interestingly in this room is we've probably got a massive range of different people in here from different organisations, which actually you probably find they don't represent you in the right sort of way, possibly. I know certainly for myself, I've moved from I'm an architect and really identify as an architect, and now I'm head of technology and we're doing completely different things to what that actually involved. And I would assume or expect that lots of you people are as well, and I think that's a really interesting place for us to be at the moment. So, as I say, these are some of the roles that could be involved with that, but I wouldn't want to limit it. I'd like it to involve as many different disciplines as possible that are out there exist currently, and that we start to have this wider professional organisation that represents digital creatives. So I've called it the Association of Data-Driven Design, and I think that there's a gap currently in the way that they're represented at the moment. I would love for you people to be involved in that, and if you could join, that would be great. So, as I say, it's about an association to represent digital specialists in construction, and I've created a website for that, which is ad.io. So please go there. You can subscribe to that website, and the aim is to kind of share more knowledge and define and create a framework for these skills and abilities, and eventually a more kind of professional status. And actually for it to be a global association, so it's not limited to the UK. It's actually looking at a much wider picture than that. And I'm talking to a lot of people in America who are quite interested in this as well. So at the moment, this has been set up. You can subscribe to the newsletter on here. There's also a group on LinkedIn. So if you find me, so it's Allister Lewis, Allister with ER. In there, you just find me on there, and there'll be a link to that LinkedIn group. And start joining that conversation. And that's what it is basically. It's about having a voice in this industry that represents you a lot more than current institutions, and I think that's a really important thing at this time. So that's the website. Please join and join the conversation. Please email or give me a chat just after this session. I've done that really quickly, but I'm conscious that it's time to get some drinks. But I'd love to have your input, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. So just before we go into the break, I will bring the three of them back up to do a quick Q&A if we have any questions. But I'm going to ask two people to come up on stage now, Sean Farrell and Nick as well. Nick to come up as well. So, bit of background: the Alliance, the UK BIM Alliance, since it became two, we've been using Google Docs as a data process management system, and how we share information has been through Google Docs. We recently conducted a CDE process on what we wanted to do, and the results of that, I'm going to let Sean talk through the process because it was his role, and take it from there.
So some of you in the room would have been involved in this. So the idea was that when I came on board and was made part of the board, working with Stephen in a co-lead for the operations, we said, how can we do this better? You know, the Alliance, we encourage the industry to do our own internal business management. So we looked at, said, okay, how do we manage information as the Alliance? That's a very different kettle of fish to how you do it as industry, because we don't manage models for a start. So we actually sat down and went through a complete process on how do you procure an information management platform, common data environment, whatever you want to argue and toss about, is to say that how do we do that? So we developed a process which is about to be published. It's going to be one of the projects that will be coming out. I talked about it at last year's Digital Construction Week. We went through an entire process with plenty of rigour, lots of engagement, and the result being is we appointed Glidotech to be our provider for a common data environment. And that's what we wanted to announce today. There'll be more information coming out through the newsletter, and we'll be publishing our procurement methods so it can be used by industry, so they can go out and be able to ask the right questions of providers like Glidotech.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. For those of you that don't know much about Glidotech, Glider Technology is our company. Glider BIM is our CDE provision, software platform. We burst onto the scene, dare I say, just after the UK mandate came into force in 2016. And I think what makes us pretty unique as a CDE provider is that we design the software to be data-driven by design. Document management and workflow systems came beyond the fundamental data-driven aspect of what we do. And to put that in simple terms, if you take an employee's information requirements and the data aspect of that, our CDE is capable of reading data from a model, from a Colby workbook, from a data source that holds structured data, and automatically verify the completeness and validity of that information against a known set of requirements. So it does all of your general day-to-day document management, but much, much more. So if anybody wants to learn more about Glider BIM, myself, John Adams are in the room. We're happy to take any questions and queries. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Allister, Rob, where's Rob? Rob and Jamie to come back up. Just if there are any questions that any of you have for the three of them, now's your chance. Raise your hand. And they're all going to say no, they have no questions, which is fine. Gary?
Just one on the BIM for water. Really impressive. You got, was it 20 out of the 23 water companies? 20 out of the 26. That's brilliant. How did you do that?
You just have to approach them, don't you? There's a lot of industry events, so sometimes they'll come and find me, or.
So were there one or two early adopters, and then they learned what the others were doing, and then decided they all need to be in the same party?
No. So I don't know if you know this, but you get large water and sewage companies, right? So that's your Thames Water, Severn Trent. They would be the early adopters. So what we're looking for now, we've got all of them. There's 12 of them. We're just waiting for the stragglers of the water-only companies to get on board. So they're your smaller outfits. So,
Well done.
yeah. So it's moving, isn't it?
Anyone else? No?
Duncan,
Duncan, you were almost there.
Come on.
Nothing?
I've been commenting on Twitter all afternoon.
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys. We're going to have a quick break now. I'm going to give you 10 minutes because I want to get you out the door. Well, no, Andy's going to get you out the door by 4:30 today if we can. So, there are some cakes, cold drinks in the fridge, tea, coffee, water. Help yourselves. Be back in 10 minutes though. So be back at 10 to. Thank you. You have to
Explain what we do and why we do it. So,
I will send them out.
yes, that's right. Yes.
So, arrange slightly talking from the team when it's
Really good. Yeah, because there's a whole load of research behind that. So you have to do it in 5-10 minutes.
So, find me on LinkedIn and stuff like that. It's just drop me an email and set up lunchtime to you or something.
We're actually based in London.
Yeah, Newman Street.
Great, yeah.
So just around the corner, top road tube.
Yeah, okay, so we've got an office in Oxford Street.
Perfect.
If you want to send me the link, electronically. Yeah. Absolutely include it in the website somewhere to vote.
And Kester asked if we could have that high definition.
Yeah, I can do it, but I had to get someone else to do it. Okay.
It's a very good way of change the scope, change the
Challenge.
It's longer than 30 seconds.
Which we haven't.
You know, as we said before, there's only all that aside. Actually, just focus sort of get enough
Send reply.
Originally we tried to get away with it. And that's what happened with BIM for M2. So BIM for water, that BIM for water presentation that those guys just done. Yeah, just stretch the legs for a bit, sure. But that looks pretty good. Yeah.
Well, when I said yeah, we have a meeting. So certified. Now we're doing the monitoring. Did you know? I have to be up to like but I didn't.
What I can't do is just run the
Can't go in to consult your and so they still using man that comes along.
Yeah, that's the thing that I finished. We're looking at whether it's worth doing. It's been having this Stantec. We've been having this dialogue about whether it's worth doing. One of the issues is that looking at things we don't often say whether clients are so congratulations. That's why I was saying to our people, we do digital delivery without part of this
It's like, okay. I think certainly from that perspective,
trying to get successfully enacted. The advantage of going to education rather than also then the sense for the whole of the company to actually go towards a unified way of doing it. Whereas before, so we've got the standards, we've got the standards, which now we've actually which is
Time for the drink.
so it feels international.
So, 6 o'clock, first.
We found it really useful to start pragmatic within the organisation. And some clients are asking having a helping response.
Seriously, some
we talked about the need for there isn't upskilling. Try and implement guidance. Hello, Richard. Hi. And Lovely congratulations to see you. again. Thank you. Two things. You mentioned the BIM for Clients get together, and you mentioned going digital. Should I be turning up at that to help? At the moment, they only want clients. They don't want anybody else. So even me. So I may even find them. Yes, I don't think they will kick me out, but they are nervous that anyone else goes. So at the moment, everybody wants to eat them alive. Yes, exactly. Yes. So I think if I can call you in, when the time is right, not too long, actually, they just feel like what you say. Well, indeed. I mean, they even walked away from constricting excellence. Well, yes, the construction client group was part of constricting excellence from a long time. They decided that was too close to all the people who wanted to eat them alive. Anyway, the other thing you won't have seen. Oh, yes, what May was talking about. May and colleagues wrote this, which is extremely to the point. It's basically saying if you're doing a building contract, you're going to use BIM. These are all the clauses that are
Where's that at? It's at Morley. Oh, lovely.
This is what to think about, not what to say, but what to think about. And then you're going to write a protocol. This is how to make sure to populate it, and also to make sure it doesn't end up clashing with the contract. based on the most popular GCT contracts, but the message is broadly applied to all of the forms of JCT contract. Essentially, that's a major step forward, because at the moment everybody's asking questions without answers, and it's available on the JCT Unity.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. How are
Good to see you.
Unfortunately, but it is only 23.
I know, that's the word.
Well, I'm told
Ages.
really very well. Are you well?
Yes, I am. I can see you.
So that
I mean,
to know about it.
And May's obviously with Andrew.
Where's that gone? Where's that gone? So we went through a stage that we had.
I was able to most away. A much bigger and brighter business. I know.
So you're still in the same area?
I'm at HMRC still doing.
Well, indeed, and this thing borrows a huge amount of the CIC protocol because it's written by the same guy to explain it. You know, so it's essentially okay.
So I am just wondering whether we can't just go ahead.
They're doing first 13
It's not as if they have to make money out of it. It's all there. It's supposed to help. Yeah.
So, interesting times, isn't it? That's for sure.
Indeed.
Right.
Indeed.
Just going to grab a
BIM manager, so it's
Making Helen.
You look like you're about to go.
I'm not going to go. I'm just clinging onto my bag.
She's got my eye on the lift, that's all I'll say.
No, I'm not going to go. I'm staying
Thank
till
you.
the end.
And then on.
How are you?
Yeah, fine, thanks.
I will.
Well done, Christine, as usual. Really good.
How are you?
All right. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, she had
Oh yeah.
Nice to see you.
This is
No, that's good.
You did, but we didn't see anything.
Um, anyway, that's this is the actual
She wasn't at the first meeting.
Target.
all of it. But this is to enable
She wants to
Have you got a phone? No, I need to go and get one actually.
Is it a college?
No, it's a school. It's going to sit now.
With staff since our last meeting.
Well, I'm drafting an build to rent, which my colleague asked for.
Yes.
And that wrote itself fairly well.
Is he going
So,
He's one. Well, I wanted him to go on both. And if he was going to go on anything, I thought Clarence, but he's going to the Washington.
just go back and get those. But I've got some.
Oh, yeah, but nothing like what they pay as a, to go.
No.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
and you get there and it's all organised. It's brilliant.
What's he going to be doing? Does his
Hopefully, fingers crossed, maths, computer science.
Where are you based?
I live in Chester.
I don't know. I think he's good at maths. He's very interested in computer science, but it's a really hard different.
Well, cruise fair.
He's really good at Am I on?
Yes, well, I'll just. Yeah, that's what I need to do.
Good.
Where's on there?
Perfect. Well, I think I'm like me.
Well, quite.
Yeah, I could hear some people panicking against it. The same.
It's like a long goodbye.
They didn't master text break, yeah, that's fine, yeah. Full screen.
Ladies and gents, can you take your seats, please? Gonna move on now.
As I say, your name's down on the list.
Yeah, if you ever think of
It said you were in the building.
Yeah, I do work quite a lot.
As well, so somebody working around with your.
Usually it's quite long.
Right, okay, thanks for coming back promptly. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah Davidson to talk through an update from the implementation stream of the Alliance. Sarah.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Try and keep this relatively to the point. Time is of the essence. So, my name's Sarah Davidson. I'm not David Glennon, but we do, just in case there was any confusion, but we do work together on what we're calling implementation. So, implementation is about the projects that are coming through the UK BIM Alliance. Just a little bit, it says there, projects completed in 2019. I'm obviously looking, I've got a slight wrong date there. Just a little bit of a look back. Projects that we did in 2019 include the Winfield Rock Report, Fresh Way Forward for Project Data, Constructing Plain Language, and Going Digital. We're using this term implementation instead of projects because we want to try and communicate the message that all of the activity that we do is about enabling information management and modelling to become business as usual. So whilst we might look at isolated projects that come through the Alliance, it's very much about the bigger joined up picture. So I want to talk about the implementation plans for 2019, and given that we're only in June, there's a little bit of fluidity around what will happen in Q3 and Q4 this year. Looking at what's happened in Q2, the activity that we've been looking at, we've had the release of the 19650 BS 1960 ISO 19650 concept guidance, and we've also worked with CDBB to release a joint call around maturity and benefits measurement, and I'm going to talk about those two things in a lot more detail. Looking ahead to Q3 2019, then we'll be looking at the second edition release of the ISO. I can't believe that I've put BS because it's going in my head all the time. And not that I've only put it once, but I've done it a lot of times, so I'm consistently flawed. So we'll be looking at the release of the second edition concepts guidance, and we will be looking at the release of the first edition process guidance. We're going to be progressing the benefits and maturity research project. And Rob, I will call you Rob if I can't see where you are, but I don't want to step into the very hallowed shoes of your mum, so I will call you Rob. He's going to be delivering his This Is Change event on the 25th of September. Andy, I'm going to put the pressure on you with the BIM survey.
Yeah, Yes.
going to start moving
Yeah,
forward in Q3 2019. Not just another BIM survey, but we're
No.
looking at having something more joined up, aren't we?
So I can very, very quickly. So obviously the MBS do a really good annual survey, and it's really well presented. It's a slick mechanism, but what we see is that, there's a very limited amount of people who actually complete it. So the idea is that potentially, and I do have a call lined up with Richard Waterhouse to maybe we
Can you
can
speak
partner.
up, Andy? Sorry.
Sorry, sort of stand up. So yeah, we do have a call with Richard Waterhouse to see potentially how we can maybe partner with them to use the affiliate program once we've got that outreach through the institutions, and actually just ask some really simple questions that's not going to put off people who aren't really into BIM, and actually get a bit of feedback where they think they are, whilst also maintaining the good stuff that the MBS survey does. So that's the project, actually, to be the sort of annual survey on where industry is with adoption implementation. So that's the vision anyway. So.
Okay. And then we've also got the project that we hope to get moving in Q3. When we look ahead to Q4 2019, what we're wanting to do with the ISO 19650 guidance is get into a little bit of a rotation of updates. So I'm anticipating we may be into the 3rd edition of the concepts guidance, the 2nd edition of the process guidance. By that time, we will have, if all goes to plan, the final report, the research report on maturity and benefits measurement. We'll have the release of the survey report, and as Sean mentioned, we're going to, or Sean is going to articulate his experience with the CDE selection into a helpful guidance paper. So that will be coming out as well this year. So I want to talk a little bit about the UK guidance framework for ISO 19650. Firstly, the team of people that are putting this guidance together is working extremely collaboratively. We're all volunteers and we all have different strengths to bring to the table. So it's very much not just around the authoring, but around the focus groups as well. It's very much a collaborative team effort. But what I would say is that there is still room for involvement as well. So please don't feel that this is a closed shop. Just going back to that. And we have a feedback email in the concepts guidance that enables you really to get in touch very easily with us and to make any comments or observations around guidance. And what we do with those comments and observations is that we consider all of them and decide a plan of action if one is needed against those comments that are coming through. So please don't feel that it's a closed shop. It's absolutely not. But the way that the guidance is being developed is we have an authoring group that flexes a little bit. So we might see the authors around the process guidance, the second phase of the guidance are maybe slightly different to the first phase of guidance. And when we look at other future ISOs being released, again, it's about getting the right people as authors. We have a focus group working with us that can really, they take a step back and look at what we're writing and say, no, the industry doesn't want that, or yes, that's exactly what we need, or have you thought about this? So they're keeping us on our toes all of the time. And then we've got this feedback that's coming through the feedback email. It is a collaborative effort with the UK BIM Alliance working with the Centre for Digital Built Britain and British Standards Institute. So the first guidance was released in April 2019. Has anybody picked up on the guidance that's come out? Okay. One of the things that I would say is that we have tried really hard to write as far as we can in very plain language. And when you do pick up the guidance, you'll see it has 6 acronyms in it, 6 acronym stroke abbreviations, and we've received a little bit of criticism for it actually, because we just wanted to make the language accessible to as many people as possible. So the concept part 1 guidance is aimed at a wide audience. It's about the high level principles of information management using building information model. It's sort of starts off at a very high level around what you need to do, what's important from a project level, and it goes down into an organisational level. We've got what we did. We realised that we had this new guide, we had this new standard coming out, but we had a CIC BIM protocol that was focused on BIM level 2 as we knew it. And so we had the input with May and her colleagues. What we did through the first part of the guidance was to release helpful points around what you need to do in terms of a protocol, because we're in that slight gappy area where we have a protocol that exists, but it's not in relation to this current ISO. We also have, as Anne mentioned earlier, ISO 19650 Part 2 is around capital delivery, and what it does is it supersedes BS 1192 and PAS 1192. So we have a national annex in the Part 1 ISO 19650 Part 1, which picks up around collaborative working with the common data environment, classification, naming, etc. So the Part 1 concepts picks up on some of that. So I think the key takeaways from that is that it's not necessarily aimed at the people that are on the ground doing things. It's about trying to get a level of knowledge out to quite a wide audience. There will be this update that comes out. The feedback that we've had is mostly editorial, but we will be taking on board that. So that update will come out in later on this quarter. And there's the email where you can engage with us and provide us with feedback. So please do that. Don't feel that you're just wasting your time and effort, because you're really not. So the Part 2 guidance, which is what our efforts are focused on now, is all about the process. And I mentioned that the guidance is being developed by a team of volunteers that have day jobs, and we've been thinking about how do we get guidance out that is going to be useful and is not, is still going to allow us to sleep at night. And with the funding that we've got available at the moment. So what we determined to do was to do an incremental release of guidance. So the guidance that you see when it's released will grow and grow and grow over the next 6 months, year or so. We're looking to develop something that ultimately is not a linear document. We don't want you to have to start at page 1 and to read through right to the very end to understand what's relevant to you. So it's going to be something that is navigable depending on what your particular interest is. And different routes of navigation that we've thought about at the moment is, well, who are you? What's your role, and how is it reflected in the ISO 19650 Part 2? And what does that really mean for you? What activities have you got to undertake? We've also thought about, well, future releases, what activity is that you've got to do? Is it that you need to generate a tender document? Is it that you've got to submit tender response? And we've also thought about themes. So what do you want to know more about? Do you want to know more about what a common data environment is and how it's referenced in ISO 19650? So the first release will look at the party. So there are 3 different types of party in ISO 19650. The appointing party, somebody we would think of as a client. There's the lead appointed party, that's that person that's managing the information exchange between the delivery team and the client, or across multiple delivery teams. And then we've got the appointed party, the tier 2s coming through that are generating quite a lot of the information. So the first release of guidance, and it will be short. I'm trying to manage your expectations here, but hopefully it's still going to be of benefit to you. It's going to tell you what are your key activities. So in that client role, it will pick up what those key things that you've got to do. And I think it was going back to the point made earlier around how do we get the people who are the decision makers engaged more with BIM or information management. And it's about giving some information that's very easy to read that says, okay, if you're in this role, then then your key activities are X, Y, and Z. But you may also be involved with these things. And so the guidance will point you directly to the clauses where some action is needed from you. And that guidance really sort of takes its structure a little bit. This is figure 3 from ISO 19650 part 2. It takes its structure around these 8 activity milestones, if you like. So going from the determination of we need to do something, we need to build a project, we need to get an information management role fulfilled, down to close out of the project. So it's very much focused around those 8 points. And it's focused as well, I love this diagram out of the ISO because I think it's really helpful. For one thing, it says that actually your project could be a relatively straightforward single delivery team, or actually it could be a really big thing with lots and lots of delivery teams. And how do we have interaction between all of those delivery teams? So what it starts to do is it looks at how you're going to exchange the information up and down, and ultimately how across through to your other delivery teams as well, and back to your appointing party or client. So we've taken quite a lot of, we're using that quite a lot to frame our guidance. And we're also thinking that people read things differently. People are, then not everybody is around reading a lot of text. Not everybody is around looking at a spreadsheet. So we're also thinking about, well, how do you get to the information that you need to get to mostly? And this is just work in progress. So this is hopefully not how it will look when it gets to you. But for example, you'll be able to see all of the, let's call them action clauses within ISO 19650 part 2. And you'll be able to see where the action falls, and also what's the flow between parties, so that you know what to anticipate from your appointing party. And actually, if you're here and you have nothing from your appointing party and you're faced with that situation where somebody is asking you for information management and modelling according to ISO 19650, you've got something that you can take back and say, look, we need to do, before we can do this for you, we need to establish exactly what is meant by that. So we've got part 1 concepts guidance, the part 2 process guidance that will be released, but we've also got the transition guidance. So those first 2 guidance are there for, well, they're there for everybody, but if you weren't familiar with the 1192 suite, then those other 2 guidance parts are where you will start. If you are familiar with the 1192 suite, then it's worth going and having a look at the transition guidance. So that starts to align some of the terminology that we were very familiar with. We were probably even whispering it in our sleep. I don't know. But it starts to align some of the old BIM Level 2 technology with the new information management and modelling terminology. We use technology there. But, so that's there for people that are familiar. So the guidance framework at the moment looks like that. Concepts, process, transition. Is that everybody clear on that? Oh, please have a look at that guidance. The guidance. It's freely available to download from the UK BIM Alliance website. The maturity and benefit measurement call. This was, we've talked about understanding more about maturity and benefits for a long time, and we know that there is already a lot of work in industry around these 2 particular areas, but it felt like it was potentially quite a concentrated project, and we knew that we had similar aspirations to the Centre for Digital Built Britain, and it just came together happily where we